All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. We are here for the panel that is aiming to answer the question, where is the cash for musicians today and beyond? The $1 million question, the $1 billion question, hopefully. And we've got quite a distinguished panel right here getting ready to dig into that for you. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about the traditional means of making money in music, and then we're going to try to get into some of the new and kind of alternative ways that are emerging now. So before we begin, I'd like to just kind of go down the line and have everyone here introduce themselves, give a sentence or two about what they do and kind of how it relates to the topic at hand. So, Dave, go ahead.
My name is Dave Cool. That is, in fact, my real name. I'm the Director of Artist Relations for a company called Bandzoogle. We're a website platform for musicians and bands. We power over 22,000 websites around the world, so musicians use our service to build a professional website, sell their music directly to fans. We have an online store feature where we take zero commission of sales, so musicians get 100% of that money. Mailing list is built in, and I do a lot of blogging for Bandzoogle, social media, and a lot of the blogging is about social media marketing and direct-to-fan relationships and how to manage that and all the interesting things that our members are doing and selling and monetizing their fan base.
Hi, I'm Kristin Thomson. I'm with the nonprofit Future of Music Coalition that advocates for musicians. In prior lives, I co-ran an independent record label called Simple Machines and was in a band that toured a lot. And, for the past few years, I've been working on a specific research project called Artist Revenue Streams that's been documenting what revenue streams musicians are relying on and how they're changing over time. So we have data from a survey that was answered by over 5,300 U.S.-based musicians and composers, plus some financial case studies and some interviews that we've turned into lots of interesting reports, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of that today.
Hi there, I'm Wade Metzler. I'm a 20-some-year veteran of the music industry and many facets of it. Now I head up the artist and industry relations on the West Coast for SoundExchange, which is independent non-for-profit performance royalties organization that collect and distribute digital performance royalties for all artists and record labels.
Hey, my name is Jay Sider. I'm the CEO and founder of BandPage. We do two things. We want to help musicians increase their revenue and grow their audience, and we are working so hard to make that happen. We've been around for 4 years. We have over 500,000 bands that use the service. We work with every major label and management company out there, and the way we try to help musicians increase their revenue and grow their audience is by, when you have something for sale, all your fans are listening to your music on Spotify and Rdio and Rhapsody and iHeartRadio, Pandora, all these places, YouTube. And so what we do is when you put something up for sale on your BandPage profile, we then send it over to be displayed on Spotify and Shazam and all the places your fans are. We get your tour dates and bio and all that information that you put on your BandPage profile and syndicate it out to all of those different platforms. So if you have anything for sale or any upcoming shows or bio and photo information that you want to be displayed to, we now reach over 1 billion fans across all the services we power. Just update your BandPage profile.
Hi, I'm Amy Dietz. I'm the general manager of INgrooves Music Group. We're a distribution platform, an artist services division, and a rights management. So what we're really focused on is giving our artists and labels options with a distribution platform that has traditional retail services, all the things that go along with that, an artist service division, which is another layer of services where we sometimes act a bit like your label, things that help DIY artists take it to the next level. And then we have rights management, which covers publishing, neighboring rights, SoundExchange. We spend a lot of time on the traditional areas of distribution, but also are always looking for kind of what's happening next. People like BandPage and trying to partner with other people to come up with new ways to find revenue for all of the artists that are working so hard and putting out great music.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I realize I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Zack Greenburg. I'm a senior editor at Forbes covering the business of music, and I'm the author of 2 books, one called Empire State of Mind, which is a biography of Jay-Z, and another one called Michael Jackson, Inc., which is a business-focused biography of Michael Jackson. So without further ado, why don't we dig right in here? I want to begin with a kind of a piece of news that I'm sure most of you here have heard about and maybe are tired of hearing about, but can't really ignore it. Taylor Swift put out a new album and then pulled all of her music off of Spotify. And there's been a lot of ink spilled on that that I have read and spilled a little bit myself. But basically, what do you guys think that means? I mean, is this kind of, does this mark the end of streaming as the future of music, or is it a blip on the radar? And is it just a kind of a thing that an artist like Taylor Swift can do, and who is not really representative of the vast majority of other artists out there? Why don't we start with who wants to take it first?
I'll take a piece.
All right.
For me, that it's a really interesting topic. I think there's a lot of debate that's happening because of what Taylor has decided to do. I think that is interesting, but in and of itself, Taylor Swift doesn't represent 99.9% of the actual music industry at this point. There's a few other people that fall into her realm, whether that's Beyonce or other people that have as much power and kind of is as big as she is and can kind of do exactly what she wants to do. So I think there's a lot of interesting debate about why she did it, what's important around some of the things they've talked about, that the management has come out and said it's really about the premium model versus the freemium model, but it doesn't always match up because they're still on YouTube. So it's an interesting debate, but I think we need to not get caught up on what it meant for Taylor. I think Beyonce came out and put out her record only on iTunes and did it without anybody talking about it. It didn't necessarily change the way everybody did their business overall. It didn't change everyone's desire and how they were going to put out a record. So I think it changes the dynamic for a while. I feel like based on being a distributor, we're going to have conversations with managers and labels for months about whether this is the right thing to do. And I think that there'll be people that think it's the right thing to do right now because streaming hasn't necessarily gone as far as they think it should be going. So they're trying to grab some sales now. I just don't think it's the end of streaming. I think it's just an evolution of how this is all going to move forward.
Yeah, I think it goes on some sort of marketing ploy as well too, as we see with U2 and we see with anybody who is making a decision to not go with the normal road of distributing their music. I think a lot of it goes with getting press and to have people talk about it, and of course sales on the front end of that. But how to kind of go just directly against Spotify, probably because that's the biggest name. It didn't quite make a heck of a lot of sense to me compared to actually making a stand and saying I'm not going to any streaming service or anybody that has some sort of freemium model.
I think there's a few interesting, which Zack had posed a few questions to us, as far as the fact that there's still other formats that are selling. There's still the CD, while it's not what it used to be, is still viable for a lot of our artists. I think you need to kind of know who the fan is, and I think that there's still a lot of options. So it proves some of those things that downloading. I think we're often quick to just kill different formats, and if something like this happens, that means it's the end of streaming, it's the end of the CD because this is happening, and a lot of that hasn't really proven out. So it's an interesting debate, but I don't think it's a blip, I think, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this panel is about generating revenue, right, today and in the future, and that's what she did. It was looking at how can she generate the most revenue right now, and so that's she had the ability to do that, but I don't think that's the case. I think we're moving forward with streaming. That's clearly happening, but it was a good move for her at this point. Just for now. But I don't think it says much about where we're going with streaming. That a bunch of artists are going to start doing this.
All right. I mean, I think kind of on that note, I would raise another question, which is where does recorded music fit in as a component in an artist's revenue stream, as compared to, where it did over the past 10, 20 years. I mean, I think in the past you could say that artists would go on tour, and tour to break even or at a loss to promote their record and make money off of record sales. And now it's kind of flipped on its head. is that a viable model where music is essentially, ideally you break even on it and then you make your money on ancillary stuff and touring?
Well, from the survey work we did and just from the interviews and things, sound recordings as a monetizable thing wasn't a big slice of the revenue pie for musicians. Like in aggregate, it was only about 6% of total gross revenue. But, I mean, it varied up and down based on genre and role and activity levels and whether they had a label deal or not. So there's a lot of different factors that determine just how much the sound recording itself is worth on the market. But we have to remember that sound recordings have other purposes. First of all, they're a document of creative work. So they're, a moment in time where you said, I created this. But they're also a trigger. They're a reason for you to go on tour. They're a reason for your publicist to go talk about your records, for people to write about them, for you to go on tour and then sell merchandise. So the sound recording itself makes it possible for you to do other things as part of your musical career.
I think it still starts with the recording, right?
Yep.
And I don't think artists should give up because they hear a lot on the news, especially us in this tech bubble, like, oh, streaming's the future, so downloads are dead, CDs are dead, vinyl's been dead for how many years now?
But it's not dead anymore.
But not dead anymore, that's right, no. So there's so many different formats, depends on your genre and activity level, of course. So if you release an album and you don't print up a bunch of CDs if you're not going to tour, but CDs can be available on the road because people want something tangible, a souvenir from the show, something that you can easily sign. I work a lot in the folk genre. That's my background. I used to program a few folk venues up in Montreal, and that genre does well with CDs. Other genres don't. So we can't just blanketly say CDs are dead or downloads are dead. It really depends on what your demographic of fans are and what they enjoy to consume. But I don't think you should give up asking your fans to pay. I love the pay what you want model. Don't just offer it for free. Just if they don't want to pay for it, they won't. But you'd be surprised how much money some of your super fans would be willing to sort of tip you or donate for your music.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the recorded music part of this is definitely evolving. The idea that you have to create a full record and have a street date, and you have to have 12 months to promote it all and to get it all set has definitely changed. I think that actually, everything I just said, creating a record, 12 months to promote it all, really works for some people. But we live in a world that you can put out 2 songs at a time, a song at a time, and really build engagement with your fans. So the question around, is recorded music an important part of a musician's life, is absolutely yes. I think it's changing in how you present that to the world. It doesn't always have to be in the format that it traditionally was in order to be able to monetize it, to be able to tour, to be able to build other things around it with some of the other tools that are available to you.
We've been talking a lot about recorded music, but and I think it's the kind of sexier part of of the music side of things. But what about publishing and licensing? I mean, I think that there's been a lot of talk about recorded music and how things are going down the drain. But publishing, it's like a little bit of a different story there. What are you guys seeing on your end?
I'm definitely not a publishing expert. We do have a rights management part of what INgrooves Music Group does. What seems to be happening is similar to what's happening in the recorded music side, in that the revenue is shifting. Where the revenue used to come a lot from mechanicals, that was a very big portion of where your revenue came from, and which was from the recorded music, from an actual album. A lot of that is moving to kind of performance. And in the case of publishing, there's a lot of metadata issues as far as getting paid, making sure that your metadata is all correct and all of the places that it's basically matching correctly. It's that you're set up correctly, but not only that you have it set up correctly, that the people that are paying you have it all set up correctly. And there are definitely some challenges for that community to get all of this stuff matched up properly. So, I mean, that's the extent of what I know. I know you have.
I mean, I think publishing to me is a great source of income, and if you have a hit song, I mean, this could be your 401k for a very long time that continues to generate income on performance royalties, or if it's synced, or what have you. I mean, there's definitely a vast amount of money for a good songwriter.
So just write a hit song. Right?
It's that easy. It's simple. It's simple.
There you go.
But on your point though, as far as clearing something on publishing side, I mean, you're looking at. If you're attempting to clear a song, some of the, a Jay's or Beyonce song could have 7 writers on it with 7 different publishers, and you need to go clear not only the master side of that if you're going to use that master recording, but also go to maybe 7 different publishers to actually get approval on that. And the time and effort spent to do that is almost at that point not worth it. So it's very, very difficult unless you have a blanket license with a lot of the major labels too, depending on what your service is. But as far as revenue generator, I mean, it can be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, if you really get to the revenue part of it, there's a lot of things that, I mean, I think one of the themes that will end up happening from this entire panel is that there's a lot of places revenue comes from. It's not just the one recorded music place. So it's really about knowing where your options are to actually get revenue from. On the publishing side, whether that's SoundExchange, whether that's neighboring rights, just knowing what is out there for you to actually be able to take money in from, and making sure that the pennies that are out there are being allocated to you and that they're not just lost in the ether in suspension somewhere. So it's definitely a lot of revenue. It's just making sure that you know what you should be looking for and what you should be taking in.
One of the things about the Artist Revenue Streams project, the first step, and actually the sort of the impetus for the work, was actually trying to document just how many revenue streams there were for U.S.-based musicians and composers. And when we started off, we did this blog post, 29 revenue streams, so that was like in October 2009 or something. And that was just our first effort. But then a lot of folks, maybe folks in this room got back to us and said, oh, don't forget this, and what about that? Oh, and there's this new one. And so right now our list stands at 45. And if you go to money.futuremusic.org, you can see the list of 45 revenue streams. We have another version of the same information called Revenue Streams Existing, Expanded, and New, which actually brings me to Wade, because part of the research we did, we always asked everybody in interviews, like, what's the revenue stream that surprised you the most? And oftentimes it was SoundExchange money, which is actually a new revenue stream for sound recordings that didn't exist until about 12 years ago. And so maybe, Wade, I'm just putting on the spot here, talking about SoundExchange.
That's right. Well, a little bit about SoundExchange. About 10 years ago, they gave out their first distribution, and that was $20 million for that year out to the artists and to the record labels. Last year, we gave out almost $600 million in royalties. So you're looking at the curve, as one of those hockey stick curves that you don't normally see in this business. Next year, we'll probably give out close to about $700 to $800 million, and it just continues to grow from there. Just in this quarter, we gave out $267 million in royalties in Q3. So, I mean, we have about, I think it's 2,500 different services that report into us. Obviously, we work on non-interactive radio. So those are services like Pandora and SiriusXM and any sort of radio-like digital service. We don't work with Spotify. Well, we do work with Spotify Radio, but not Spotify or any of the other actual streaming services, because they do direct licenses. So we do the non-interactive part. And obviously, the main income source for the artists on our side is definitely Pandora, with Sirius close behind, and then kind of everybody else stacking up down there. But you're looking at 2,500 different services that are paying into us that people are earning off of. So that's the royalty stream on our side, we see vast growth, and it doesn't slow down anytime soon, which is a real bright spot for this industry, and that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you guys pay artists directly?
Directly. So we pay artists directly. We pay monthly, which is great, but we also make sure that the artists get. Thanks for the commercial,
Sorry.
by the way.
I just apologize to Zack.
No, this is great.
Yeah, but we make sure that the artists get paid directly, and that it doesn't go through the record label, so it's that there's no sort of recoupables taken out of what they actually earn, so it generates and goes straight to them. and I had another great point that will come to me here in a minute. But one income source that we're definitely missing on the performance royalty side, at least for the performers, the performing artists, and for the labels, is terrestrial radio. As it is now, for years they've been paying ASCAP BMI for the songwriter and the publisher side of it, but there's no terrestrial radio actual performance royalty for the actual performing artist and the record label. So this is something that we're working on heavily to try to bring into the revenue stream. We're talking, I think last year it was something like $17 billion that the terrestrial radio had earned in income. So if any sort of piece of that to be handed out to the artists and labels on our side, would be obviously fantastic. So that's something we're working on very heavily right now to hopefully put that into the revenue stream as well.
And I would add to that, I think one of the things that goes overlooked in the whole streaming debate is that streaming services do pay the performer as well as the songwriter, unlike terrestrial radio, which I think people don't really like to talk about too much. But I guess it's kind of an unsexy point. But so we've kind of gotten into the next question already, which is what are the new and non-traditional means of earning money that artists are overlooking right now. I think SoundExchange is a great example. But what are the other ones that you guys are seeing? Kristin, what are some of the other of the 45 that people might not really know about?
It's not like our survey data just showed an extreme, surprising results. Like people were making money on doing producing or making money from the AFM AFTRA Intellectual Property Rights Fund if they were a session musician. It depended a lot on people's role and genre and the kind of work they do. But, we asked questions about just to get baseline information on fan funding, on YouTube partner payments, on ad revenue, on sponsorships. These are all things that were usually either they didn't exist or they were only available to the top mini 1%. So I think there's folks on this panel that can talk about their experience in that environment.
I think it's important to keep in mind that not all fans are created equal. So you're going to have different types of fans. You're going to have the casual fan that might stream your song once in a while on Spotify. You're going to have other fans who are going to want to go to your website to find out more about you and maybe buy some limited edition merchandise. We have a band on Bandzoogle called Enter the Haggis who did a documentary film about the making of their record. They used their mailing list of about 20,000 fans, said, our documentary film's on sale for the next 24 hours, get it for 50% off, and they sold hundreds of copies of this digital file. They kept, because they're through Bandzoogle, they kept 100% of that money, and they sent us a note saying, man, we just raised thousands of dollars for our next tour. So not all of their fans are going to buy that, but they're super fans that want to consume everything that the band is doing. You have to remember those fans because, we have bands selling like branded voodoo dolls, like this metal band that has these branded voodoo dolls in their store, and people are buying it, but not the casual fans. But you can't just put out the music and put it on streaming. You have to think about all those different fans who are going to want to experience your music and your career in a different way and on a different level.
Yeah. So I want to tell a story. So in the gaming business, and just to look at different industries and how our industry is evolving. In the gaming business, before 2007, you went to the store, you bought a game, you went home, you played it. And the gaming business had no idea how many times you played that game. If it was 1 time or 10 times or you played it for 10 hours straight. Then in 2007, it came online. And every gaming company could see how many times you would play that game, whether you played for a minute or 10 minutes or 5 hours. And what that did for the gaming business is it was a tens of billions of dollars increase, just because they're able to see who you are as a gamer, as somebody that's playing their game, and when to monetize, or when to show you something to buy. The same thing in the music space is happening. Before this point, there was the fan would go to the store, buy a CD or buy a record, go home, listen to it 1 time, 10 times, but the musician had no idea how many times, how big of a fan that was, how much money they were willing to spend, how invested they are. Now we have streaming, and it's amazing because you can see that in the same way that the gaming space did. You can see that this particular fan listened, 23 times or 50 times or 150 times in the last 30 days, and we can now target them. So not only do we need to look at new revenue streams, but just as a business in general, being able to target our customer. We, as musicians, we are a business, and our fans are our customers. And understanding who your fans are and being able to target them in the same way that the gaming business went through in 2007, we're going through right now, and there's just an amazing opportunity, tens of billions of dollars opportunity that we're going through as well. So it's not only the new revenue streams that's happening, but this huge opportunity as a business to be able to reach and monetize your customer. It's amazing, and we're starting to see that. We've at BandPage we're helping musicians reach their fans on Spotify and Shazam and all these places, and we've helped bands double their tour revenue. There's a band out of Austin, Texas named Wild Child. They increased their tour revenue by 50%. Just by putting extra things up for sale. So instead of just doing the concert, they also did meet and greets. At the show, or they played you 2 songs before the show. Joe back there, I'm gonna call you out, is the manager of the Stone Foxes. They did meet and greets before the show, increased revenue on their tour by 25%. So there are all these things that we can be doing, not only new things to sell, but being able to reach a customer in a really targeted way is an incredible opportunity for this business that we're just starting to get into right now.
You don't have to spend as much money throwing it out in the dark. You have a lot more information with limited resources, being able to target using a lot of the tools that are available with the data that's coming back, which does make it much more exciting as opposed to just kind of spending a whole bunch of money, hoping you're hitting the right target, the right audience that's actually going to react. You have a much better way of, and actually then seeing the reaction. Mm-hmm. You can actually then see if somebody is paying attention, which does make it really exciting.
Yeah, we used to walk around, I've managed bands and venues. I'm a musician myself before I started BandPage. And, we used to walk around and, do flyers and posters and whatever, and hopefully trying to hand the right flyer to the right person that was walking down this, block that I was standing on. Versus now I can hand the flyer, virtually to the person that listened to my song 23 times. Here's the flyer for my show for the person that listened 57 times. Here's a VIP, meet and greet for the person that listened to me 150 times. It's just, it's never been possible. And again, for the gaming business, it was a tens of billions of dollars increase, and that's what we're going through right now. And sorry if I keep talking, but there are really great new forms of revenue that are coming out and being proven, through the crowdfunding sites, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Pledge Music. They're seeing real uptick in revenue that you can create as a musician. Another site that recently came out from a good buddy of mine, Patreon, is doing really well too, where every time you release a new piece of content, your fans can say, every time this artist releases a new piece of content, I want to give them $1 or $2 or $3. And so now his band, Pomplamoose, is making, I think, $6,000 or so every time they release it. And there are other bands that are making, more, and up-and-coming bands that are making like a couple $100 when they do it. So, we don't really care as BandPage as far as the types of ways musicians are generating revenue. We want to help them get that out to their fans across these services. So we'll pull in Patreon campaigns, Pledge Music campaigns, Bandcamp, anything. We'll pull it out and push it out to those fans. But we're just starting to see really incredible conversion rates from traditional and new forms of revenue.
I'll add too, I guess on that note, I think the CD is kind of it's a dead object. It doesn't tell you anything really. Like once you sell it, it's out there, it's done. And as we were saying before, how many times you play it, you never know. But it's interesting to see too, hearing all the stories about, particularly on the touring front, artists will talk to Spotify or really anyone who has that kind of data on where music is being streamed. And, there's a story, it may be apocryphal, but that on Jay-Z's last tour, he figured he would go, when he went to Europe, he would just go to London for a couple of shows in the UK, and then he would go on to Paris or Amsterdam or wherever. But he talked to the people at Spotify and found out that actually he was being streamed very heavily in Manchester and played a sold-out show or two there. So that's the kind of stuff that's available now. But, I wanted to kind of turn it back a little bit and say, we're talking about the new ways of making money and the new income streams, but what are the traditional income streams that artists are kind of overlooking right now? Maybe because they're more focused on the new stuff.
I don't know if there's a lot that people are overlooking. I think that it's to go to kind of the crowdfunding and things like that. we definitely, in the labels and artists that we work with, we certainly have some people that kind of don't want to feel like they're asking their fans for money. So you end up with a little bit more traditional campaigns when you're talking about doing something potentially with Pledge or Bandcamp or any one of those kind of ecosystems that end up being a little bit more like a pre-order as opposed to where it really feels like you're asking for a certain amount of money before a record gets made. So there are, I don't know that there's anything that people are really missing, but there are people that are more interested in doing things just slightly more traditionally and potentially not wanting to feel like they have to do a meet and greet every time they go do a show. So giving them some other tools to be able to still sell their music without having to do all of those things and present them in a way that it's more of like a pre-order event as opposed to just crowdfunding in the same way.
I'm gonna make a statement. It's funny. We have this big conversation right now about how we're not making money. And especially a lot of up and coming musicians. Well, I was in bands. I managed bands, big and small, and as up and coming bands, we never made a lot of money. Even if we had CDs to sell when they were selling, in the heyday of that time. And so I think it's funny because we're putting this focus on, where's the revenue? And yes, it's taken a huge dip, kind of at the higher level of the industry. But at the end of the day, you're a business. Like literally pretend that you're a shop that's selling socks in the middle of Times Square, and you just opened shop, right? So you just recorded your song, and you open shop, and you're like, there's a bunch of people walking by. How do I get them in? What things can I sell these people? What price point should it be? What value do they see in the things that I can provide? And I'm an entertainer, I'm a musician, and I think it's frustrating as musicians to see or to feel like people, fans, customers don't value the art that that we create, but it's just an evolution of kind of what's happened in the music business, in today's moment. So we really just need to think about ourselves, whether you're a small, medium, or large musician, that you're a small, medium, or large business, and what is it that your customer finds value in? What will they pay for, and how do you reach them effectively? And so all these, I think, getting the music out there is obviously the most important. But then how can you interact with them? Stageit's done some really interesting things. Musicians have made some good money there, and Patreon and Pledge Music and Bandcamp and a number of these other ones. People are making money, and so you need to try those different things out with your fan base to see what works for you. If merch doesn't sell, try different types of merch. People are fashionable; they want to feel cool, sell something cool, design. Get a good design out. So it's as far as like traditional things, I think people are still trying them, but it's still hard. As a small, medium, or large business to become a big, successful business and brand.
And also, just very quickly, musicians should understand that they're selling socks at Times Square with thousands of other musicians selling songs
totally.
at Times Square. So how do you stand out from all those other sock vendors?
Yeah, and I think to some extent you can kind of look at it like all musicians coming up are kind of like startups, and you have to figure out when you want to turn on the monetization, right? Like maybe it does make sense to put out your product, basically for free or at a loss for the first however much time, but then you have to start actually making money to kind of have a livelihood, and then the question is, when do you do that? So I guess on that note, I'll come to the last question before we get into your questions, and that is, if you woke up tomorrow morning and found yourself in a band that had just recorded a killer album, but had blown all of its money on recording the album, or maybe there was a little bit left over and like your dog ate it or something, I don't know, whatever. You have your band, great album, no money. Tomorrow, what do? You have no record deal, nothing. But where do you start? Where do you start making money? Where do you start trying to market your wares? How do you go with that?
First thing I would do is rehearse to the point where your live show is incredible, and so that everyone that sees you live is going to talk about you on social media and spread the word, and that's one of the best things you can do.
Yeah, and as a musician, you need to educate yourself on everything that is out there and that is available to you. And, as being a small business, you need to be the business owner, and you need to own up to yourself and not wait for someone else to help you get the money in. You really need to educate yourself on what has to be done. And there are so many different avenues, as we've talked about, and so many different revenue streams that are available at this time. It's a matter of knowing about them and getting on them and being able to kind of promote yourself through these vehicles that are already there.
I have 3 tips for the band that just finished recording a record, which is, have you got an intra-band agreement that actually documents who owns what and what percentage? Because of putting out records in the 90s, when we were our objective was to sell things until they didn't exist anymore. So we're like, 1,007 inches, done, next. And so, but now things exist way past probably the lifespan of your own band. So you have to actually be able to pay royalties to bands 25 years from now. So you have to know who owns what and what percentages go to which person. And it also helps signing up with SoundExchange and your PRO, because they're going to ask what splits there are, because it's important. And these are all the foundational parts. Having the proper metadata, the proper credits is the sort of key, the baseline you need for your music to be discovered, for it to be attributable to you, and for you to be paid for it. So, I think having an interband agreement that documents it and then being careful and diligent about your metadata is the basic beginning of other things.
I would say first step, call Wade and see if he's got any money for you.
Yeah.
Well, it's very true. It's very true. We find money. That's what we do constantly. We do a in Los Angeles. I do a night every Monday at the Bardot, and it's just 4 bands that play and 3 DJs. And I look up every band that's I do it with Chris Doritas and some other people, promoters there, and we look up the bands that are all playing and that we're booking, and all of them are not necessarily affiliated with SoundExchange yet, because a lot of them are up and coming. And we've already, over the past few months, found $85,000 for some of the bands that were there, and gave them $75,000 already, and now just kind of getting their other ones in line. So it's not unheard of that, I look somebody up and there's $17,000, $25,000, $2,000 waiting for them. And that's a great way to obviously get a hold of people. We have a very difficult time, believe it or not, well, you can believe it, of actually getting a hold of somebody and say, hey, we're SoundExchange, is who we are. We have royalties waiting for you, etc. And they're it's pretty much like, oh yeah, and they just think it's somebody giving out free money just because they're not educated on what we are and what we do. So sometimes it's very, very difficult to actually give out that money. Yeah.
So if I'm a business and I just created my first product, I think I would think about what's the most cost-effective way to get that product out to people. So I'd pay a little bit of money to get it distributed and get it in front of people. And then I'd look at how many people, who is my customer, what's the demographic, what do they spend, what things are they buying these days, where are they located. I'd probably put together, I'd knock on every venue door. I'd talk to every band that's playing and try to open for them, get in front of their crowd. I'd put all my music out there, for free as I was just starting to be able to build that up. And then I would start to, I think, play more shows, understand, the types of products that my customers are willing to buy, and take it one step at a time until I can get it to a point where I can actually sell enough things to start making a career out of that. But again, it just starts as any startup. Just like we started BandPage here in San Francisco, I was sleeping on the floor, for a year, eating rice and beans. Trying to build this product and find the right customers and market and build it. It's the same thing. Just, I think we need to shift our mindset as musicians to, small, medium, and large businesses.
Well, and there's services like INgrooves that are able to take a band that is doing and being able to get it to every different revenue source possible out there, and then and be able to kind of work at a one-stop shop like that, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, as we talked about, it's really knowing what you touched on, knowing what is available to you. The joke I said when he first said that was, if I was in a band, I wouldn't spend all my money on making a recording. I probably would spend some of my money on making a recording. I'd probably spend a lot of my money on trying to play shows, actually figure out who we were, who our fan is. And I think we've all said it in many different ways, really understanding who your fan is everything that we just said are ideas of where monetization can come from. But ultimately, you as the artist have to understand what your fan is willing to buy. Where are they? Do they skew that they actually want more physical than they want digital? It doesn't mean you don't put it up digitally, just what should your focus be? You really need to understand who you are and who your actual fan is. And when you know those kinds of things, then you can start to see all of the tools that are available to you and understand what you need. Maybe you have one single and you think you just need to put it out on your own, but you get into 4 or 5 songs and you've played, and you actually want somebody that can help you with other services such as INgrooves, where you actually have, you can get your music out to all of the retailers. There's actually services that we can provide, marketing for you. We can help you with into publishing and kind of be a one-stop shop for all of these things. You can see what the evolution of you as an artist is, and there's tons of options for you, and it's really about educating yourself as to what you really need at the time. And sometimes also not getting bogged down in all of the tools and being so concerned about when you should post stuff and like some of the minutia. It's really understanding what you're trying to accomplish and getting people to help you to do that.
I just want to add one thing, and I apologize in advance because this is not going to be a popular statement, but if I was in a band that just spent all my money on recording an album, I would go get a day job or a side job and make money, or play cover gigs, teach, give workshop, hustle, make money. I made a documentary film 10 years ago called What is Indie? It was a look at the independent music movement that was just starting to bubble up at the time, and I worked a full-time day job to fund it and to market it, and no regrets. I mean, that was what was necessary, and you just have to... I'm more conservative with this kind of thing, but I don't think it's beneath anyone to work a job and pay the bills until you're ready to take that jump.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, why don't we move along to your questions? So we've got a microphone back here, and just kind of go ahead and I think we had one over here from like 10 minutes ago. No. Okay. Go ahead.
You mentioned one thing about interesting revenue streams like the meet and greet before the show. Do you have other things to share that have been working for artists?
Yeah, so the main things that we're seeing, so we've, hundreds of thousands of products in the across the stores now. And, any in-person experience sells really well. And if you take whether that's a backstage pass or like even for this the Stone Foxes, Joe, you guys are playing when you're touring, you're playing to 200-300 people. When you're playing here, you're playing to like 500-700 people, right, in hometown. Is that right? So I think what the industry has missed a bit is a lot of up and coming artists believe that those in-person experiences are only for the big bands and people aren't willing to pay. But they sold them for like $20 a pop, $30 a pop. And fans, they're not musicians. They've never been backstage in a shitty pub. And, and you're their favorite band. And so they're willing, they'd love to spend an additional $20. And if you're making, if you net $300 or $500 and you can, make an extra $200 by selling 10 to 20 people, like that's that's an incredible uptick in revenue for you. So any in-person stuff like that, as well as if you take any old what we've also seen is any old piece of inventory, so piece of merch or vinyl, and you sign it, that really matters to people, and you can mark it up 20% or so and sell it. Also online concerts, that's something that's very affordable and easy to do. So StageIt is obviously known well for that, but also YouTube, Google Hangouts, stuff like that. You can Skype, you can do those online interviews and concerts for $10 or $20 or $50. We've had up to a couple $1,000 where there was an online concert that happened. So those are working really well also.
And just to add to that, not to take too much farther, but I think the interesting piece of that we didn't really touch on much is fans are looking for a connection, and when you talk about streaming, it's a box on the service. You don't even really get the full artwork experience. Many of us that are vinyl fans, there's a different experience in general. So when you do things like that, and you have somebody who comes sees you at some pub when, there's 200 people, they'll remember that forever, and they will likely be a fan for life because of it. So when you take that extra step, we've kind of moved away from the emotional connection from having the thing in your hand, even though people will buy that too. When you create other areas like that, I think you really create a fan connection, a fan engagement, and that's what gets really people to stick around kind of for life.
And sorry, one more thing. House concerts are working incredibly well. So Leah Rose, another local artist to San Francisco, but we also have a bunch of other artists that are doing this. She's charging like $500 to come do a house concert, and if you play at any of the small or medium-sized venues around town, you hardly make that at a show.
Very true.
And so if you just go to a house, put out some wine and cheese, and invite people over, it feels really special. It's unique. It's interesting, and they're willing to pay. Instead of $5 or $10 to go to a smaller venue around town, they'll pay $20 or $30 because it's kind of this special thing. That's working really well for up and coming artists as well.
Yeah.
Join it. Give them some. Give them a drink and tell them to join in. Dance around.
I was going to bring up the same thing. My friend White Buffalo, when he was first getting started, he would do house concerts, and he would do it for a case of Budweiser, and he would, pretty much like invite your friends. He was really about that was his social networking. Invite your friends over. I'll come over and play for you guys.
First, I'd like to thank you for this excellent panel. A lot of great information. Second, are any of you looking for socks? And I was just curious if you have any thoughts on the distribution method of like Tom York recently releasing Tomorrow's Modern Boxes just on BitTorrent, and also the type of release that comes out of the blue, which a lot of people are, like you were saying, the traditional way is having like a bunch of promotion. And recently some artists have just been like, hey, my album's ready for download. Here, go here and buy it right now, And a lot of popular artists. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that model.
Sure, that's great when you've had years of major label marketing behind you. Works well. If you're an unknown artist and you're just like, surprise, here's my album. I don't think that's going to be as effective. I don't know if anyone...
I completely agree.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of it, again, is this is more marketing ploys and ways to kind of get press on what you're doing and kind of making money on the back end of something like that, or long tail of it. I kind of take those with a grain of salt of some of those that are happening. I think it was even like Ty Segall, though. I think he put out like 5 albums last year or something like that. Yeah, I mean, there's someone that is just like, prolific. Okay, I'm done. He puts it out, and and believe it or not, he does quality. So it's that's someone who's definitely taking advantage of the system as it is right now, and really getting music out there and keeping himself fresh all the time, and not waiting for every 2 years putting out an album or what have you.
I think it goes back to the idea of who's your fan. With somebody like with Ty, I happen to be a huge Ty Segall fan. Yeah. I'll buy anything that he puts out. I love that he puts out tons of records. That doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So it does kind of go back to who is your fan. The major labels, like if you're Tom York, you can do kind of anything you want, and you have a huge fan base. That if you just put it out and nobody knows who you are, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But you can do that. I mean, it's knowing what you're trying to accomplish. You can definitely spend a year promoting something and building up and having an entire plan, or you could try to put something out in a month.
I find Tom York losing fans more than gaining them, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's
I think with his hijinks, I think he's more, I don't know, in my opinion at least.
It starts to get a bit boring.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're always looking for socks.
and I'll add too on the note of up and coming songwriters or singers or singer songwriters. I think one of the things that I've been seeing more of lately is actually acts or songwriters, particularly getting essentially broken by a commercial, being in a commercial, having a song placement in a commercial. I don't know if you guys know the LP, singer-songwriter out of LA. She actually got her. She's been around for a few years, but she got her big break really when she got one of her songs called "Into the Wild" played in a city commercial. If you don't know it, look it up. You've probably heard it, "Into the Wild." But anyway, her song appeared in this commercial, and then people will be like, "Oh yeah, Into the Wild," and I think that's kind of represents a bit of a change where in the past that would have been seen as selling out, and maybe to some extent it still is, but the reactions I've seen around that particular example are like, yeah, good for her. She she found a way to get paid and get her music played. So I think that's another a big change and a kind of a route for singer-songwriters.
Hi, I'm Tom Murphy from the SF chapter of the Recording Academy. One topic that the Taylor Swift discussion brought up is her comment about music having value. And on the one hand of the spectrum, we have more and more new free services that make the kind of the infinite jukebox in the sky available, which can be seen as devaluing a song. But then the question I have to you is simply, what are things that can be done by artists to show the audience the value, more value of their music? That this isn't just one in the sea of anything, but this is something that's more special, that's worth paying for, perhaps.
Knowing who you are as an artist and telling that story and engaging with your fans. It's really become part of the job description to engage with your fans online. I know a lot of musicians aren't comfortable with that, and I don't really know what to say to musicians when I get asked that. Well, I don't really like going on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I don't know what to say because that's where your fans are hanging out, and you can really develop a relationship with them, and that adds context and value to what you're doing as an artist.
Although sometimes a little mystery is interesting, too. I mean, sometimes you have people that they're exact opposite. That stuff just happens. Sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint any of the things that are going to turn into, a marketing explosion. But sometimes it's the person who's never been on Twitter and you have no idea who they are, and you've heard the song and you're really interested by it. But overall, it's absolutely about.
I agree with that. I always find those types of artists have some kind of marketing team behind them.
There's somebody doing
There's
something.
There's
somebody. They got some licensing. Yeah. Awesome thing.
But I think too, the world's changing, and not just in music, in so many different industries where, writers aren't getting paid nearly as much for what they're doing, and it's really exciting. I think it's a really exciting time because the only way to reach our fans a number of years ago was through social networks like Facebook and Twitter. But now instead of you having to keep updating all of these places, to create that engagement, your fans are just listening to you and interacting with you on all the different streaming services. So I think it's our job as an industry to enable you as a fan or as a band to reach us. Of course, that's exactly what we're focused on. So I don't mean to be that's all I think about all day but it's really an exciting time because I remember when Facebook we were the largest music app on Facebook at a time, and so we were really focused on keeping that engagement up, and then they went down to okay, now you can, when you post, you only reach 16% of your fan base, and now it's 5 or 6% or whatever, and you can do a promoted post and reach them, and having to keep that up. But now you have literally there's over 1 billion fans a month that are listening to music across the different streaming services and lyric sites and that are engaging out there, and so it's just hitting them at the right time with that. So I think we can bring value. I think certain artists can bring value back to to the music to get fans to buy the music, but I also think there's a clear trend that's happening, and consumers just aren't willing to pay. It's very public and factual that consumers aren't paying that much, and so for the song, and so how do you generate revenue around that? And I think that's the thing that we need to continue to focus on. And a lot of other industries have done that and been successful in moving in that direction.
All right, we got time for a couple more. We got one right here.
Hi, my name is DJ Celeste, and I'm a local music producer, and I work as a DJ. And this is kind of along the same lines as what Tom was saying. I'm sure a lot of us are musicians and music producers, and here are releasing music, and we're all worried about how much the music has been devalued over the years. And streaming, of course, is a huge concern for all of us because we get checks in the mail that are like, $3, and we're getting tens of thousands of plays. And so I feel like people are now conditioned to think that music should be free. A lot of my friends do this. I'll have a show, I'll have CDs out, and they just want me to give them a CD, and I'll have to explain to them, well, the cost of producing music is still very high. The recording equipment, the training, education, and it just doesn't register to people. So I feel like it's getting worse with the streaming services and these companies. A lot of them just, I feel like, I'm sure all of us agree, like we feel like everyone just forged ahead. It all happened really fast. The rates came out and everyone was like, well, what does this mean? 0.0007? It's like, what is this going to end up being? They forged ahead with only like the bottom line in mind, not thinking about the real repercussions. And so I've been talking about with friends, musician friends, and people in the industry over the years, like, what would you guys think if maybe a paid subscription, these companies from now on, they can't operate unless people pay $10 a month, because just to be able to get the service for free with the advertising, I know they use advertising as a source of revenue, but why not make people have to pay $10 a month? Because that's how people are, and then distribute that music.
There's certainly services that do that. I mean, Rhapsody,
RDO.
There's subscription services.
Right. Yeah. But do you think that money gets evenly distributed, or they're always playing the poor, like Pandora and all these companies are saying, oh, we can hardly pay our employees, but yet they're worth billions of dollars. So I'm just confused. So what do you guys?
It's confusing and it's frustrating. No doubt things are changing in a really big way. And I'm happy to talk to you after this because there's so many things to break down in that. But I think the very high level thing to consider in this moment in time is like the music business has changed throughout history. The musician business, the history of the musician business. We actually did a study inside BandPage around this, how musicians made money. From a couple hundred years ago up till today. And it used to be patronage, where you would just, there would be certain people that would give money to an artist to come play, and then it was the troubadours that would like fiddle on the bridge and do the thing, and then and then you fast forward a bit, and then there were bands that played in venues, and then the jukebox came out, and everybody went crazy because that's how musicians made money, playing at venues, and now you got this machine that plays a bunch of songs, right? And then you moved into recorded music. And all the things that we've been through over the last couple decades, and now we're at this point. But along the way, the musician business, the way you generate revenue as a musician, has changed a lot. It feels like a massive change, because it's so near and dear to us over the last couple decades here. But people need music. The world needs it. I have some like fundamental philosophies about how music makes people feel and live, and they need it, and so they will pay for it. They will support the musician in one way or another, so that music can stick around. As far as like the business model, I know executives at Pandora and Spotify and all these companies, they care a lot about musicians. It's hard to run a business. They have very thin margins, and they're trying to pay out what they can while still providing a service. So it is frustrating, and it's not easy. But I think as an industry and as a people of music, as musicians, we need to look at the history of music and see the different ways we as musicians generate a revenue for ourselves over time, and reinvent that again today.
All right, we got time for one more.
Well, on that case, though, again, I don't know if I necessarily agree. I don't know what the pricing model should be on streaming, and I don't know if it's $10. It's a difficult question. I actually was going to bring up today, and I don't necessarily like the free model because of the advertising, just for the mere fact of what they pay to the artist on a free model compared to what do they pay on a subscription service it's much different. Because there's just a lot more revenue being brought on a subscription, obviously. I myself, I'm a super user, though. I mean, I would pay a hell of a lot more than $10 a month to have Spotify. I don't know what that even point is for the average consumer to actually do.
And there's technology allowing people like you to give way more money to that artist.
Yeah, or even more high fidelity or something like that. There's got to be maybe an add-on or something like that, or maybe there's another tiered service. But I don't necessarily like. It's the radio model. It's the radio model where we'll feed you a bunch of commercials, and and the terrestrial side, obviously, they're just making that straight profit. At least on the digital side, at least Pandora is at least paying some of that back to you. But in that case, Pandora pays a hell of a lot more for a stream on a subscription service than they do on their actual free service.
All right, real quick.
That being said, I agree that people would much rather go to Spotify and get the music for free than buy it. And these services are built on the content of musicians. And there's got to be a bridge that really helps musicians who are supplying this content. And it's, as a musician, producer, and recording artist, I know most people will go to Spotify and listen to anything for free. And, it really does take away from sales. So what is the answer? How can we bridge that? And
I promise you
how can we educate them?
Yeah, I promise you we'll figure it out. Like we're gonna solve this, and there are fans that see value in the music and the art that you create, and we just need to provide the way to translate that value into dollars back to you as the artist. And it's just changing a little bit, but it will be solved. And I can talk to you over here for an hour as well, about this. But on average on Spotify, the consumer is paying about 3 times more than they used to pay just buying digital downloads. And so, but I don't mean that to debate that point. What I do mean is that your customer sees a lot of value in what you do, and we just need to figure out the best way for them to provide that value back to your wallet or purse or bank account, whatever.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for showing up today. Thank you to the panelists, and catch you next time.